If you think about the massive organizations you interact with every day, I mean, most of them struggle to standardize something as simple as an email signature.
Right. They draft a corporate policy, they send it out in a mass email, and then they just rely on passive hope that people will actually comply.
Exactly. But imagine trying to control the exact behavioral output of hundreds of thousands of people. And we aren't just talking about what they do during their actual work shifts.
No, it goes much deeper.
Yeah, we were talking about dictating how they dress down to the quarter inch, exactly how they stand, and how they physically demonstrate respect for a piece of cloth.
Because passive hope is entirely insufficient when the stakes involve national defense. You absolutely cannot rely on assumptions or mass emails.
You need a system?
You need a clinical, systemic architecture for human behavior, one that scales globally without degradation. You need a system that ensures the person executing the mission in a desert halfway across the world applies the exact same standard as someone sitting at a desk in headquarters.
Welcome to what we're playfully calling the Blue Suit Files today, because we are digging into exactly how that scaling works. We have a stack of excerpts from Air Force Handbook 1 for this deep dive.
Specifically, Chapter 23 on dress and appearance and Chapter 24 on customs and courtesies.
Right, but we also have the critical cipher that makes this entire system function, which is the Airman Development and Testing Chart. So our mission today isn't just to read a rulebook to you.
Not at all. We are looking at the underlying systemic logic the Air Force uses to decide exactly how much a mid-level manager,
Specifically a technical sergeant.
yes, specifically a technical sergeant, needs to understand about these rules.
That is the key right there. Before we can even look at the specific uniform regulations or behavioral protocols, we have to understand the matrix of how the organization actually expects its personnel to learn them.
And that matrix is the Airman Development and Testing Chart, commonly referred to as the ADTC. It basically operates as a promotion roadmap.
Based on extensive surveys of regular Air Force Chief Master Sergeants.
Yeah. Exactly. The ABTC assigns a required level of comprehension to every single piece of knowledge in the handbook, and that is dictated entirely by an individual's rank.
And the ADTC breaks comprehension down into 4 very distinct levels. Like level A is remembering.
Which is basic fact retrieval. You just pull it from memory.
Right. And level B is understanding. This means constructing meaning, interpreting the rule, and actually explaining the why behind the facts.
Moving up, level C takes it further to applying. That means actually carrying out or using a procedure in real-world situations.
And finally, level D is analyzing, which involves breaking concepts down into their structural parts and determining how they interrelate.
So when we examine the ADTC specifically for a technical sergeant or TSGT, we see a really fascinating pattern. Chapters 23 and 24 are predominantly assigned level B, understanding.
Okay.
However, certain specific interpersonal sections within Chapter 24 actually elevate to level C, applying.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to unpack this architecture for a second.
Okay.
Because I look at level A like knowing the recipe, right? You just read the recipe card.
Right.
But level B is knowing exactly why you use baking powder instead of baking soda.
Yeah.
So here's my question. If the military is fundamentally an organization built on following orders, why not just demand level A for everyone?
You mean just rote memorization?
Yeah. Why does a technical sergeant need to understand the theory? Why not just do what the text commands?
Because the consequence of relying solely on level A is operational fragility. You have to think of a technical sergeant as a critical node in the enforcement of discipline.
Like a linchpin.
Exactly. They are the leaders directly overseeing the junior enlisted force. If a TSGT only remembers a rule level A, but does not understand the functional relationship behind it, level B, they become a single point of failure in the entire system.
How so? Give me an example of what that failure actually looks like.
Well, if you only memorize a standard, you cannot effectively explain it to a junior airman who is just learning the ropes. And more importantly, you cannot enforce the standard when a scenario inevitably deviates from the black and white text of the handbook.
Because the real world is messy.
Exactly. The real world is incredibly messy. A leader who lacks level B comprehension simply cannot adapt. They end up creating a localized breakdown in discipline because they don't know the why behind the what.
So Chapter 23 is all about controlling the physical uniform to prevent that kind of operational fragility. Let's look at what these TSGTs actually have to understand. Because the level of granularity here is wild.
It is extremely precise.
Take the operational camouflage pattern, the OCP uniform. Airmen are authorized to roll up the sleeves on the OCP code, But it's not just roll them up if you're hot.
No, not at all.
The cuffs must remain visible, and the sleeve must rest at or within exactly 1 inch of the forearm when the arm is bent at a 90-degree angle. I mean, someone is literally eyeballing a 1-inch margin on a sleeve.
And the color criteria are equally uncompromising. Every single piece of insignia, the tapes, the ranks, the patches, must use a specific spice brown thread embroidery.
Spice brown, not just brown.
Exactly, spice brown. And there is a precise exception built into that rule. First lieutenant and lieutenant colonel rank insignias will actually be black, so they can be visually distinguished from second lieutenants and majors who wear the spice brown.
Wow.
Furthermore, there is a strict consistency mandate regarding how these items are attached. Name tapes, Air Force tapes, and ranks must be either all sewn on or all attached via Velcro.
Wait, so I can't have a sewn-on name tape but a Velcro rank patch?
Absolutely not. Personnel are strictly forbidden from mixing sewn-on and Velcro tapes or ranks on the same uniform. It is all or nothing.
And the badge placement is just as rigid. According to the text, an airman can wear a maximum of 4 occupational qualification or skill badges above the Air Force tape.
Yep.
But Group 1 mandatory badges, which include fields like chaplain, aeronautical, space, cyberspace, multi-domain warfare, and missile operations, always have to occupy the highest position.
Yes.
So even if you have 5 qualifications, you have to 4. And if you're a chaplain, that badge is always sitting at the very top of the hierarchy.
It is. But here is where it gets really interesting and where that level B understanding becomes absolutely critical. For all this millimeter-level obsession, the manual actually builds in intentional gray areas. It actively acknowledges vagueness.
Vagueness in a military regulation.
Precisely. For example, the text dictates that the OCP coat must generally be worn outside the trousers. However, it explicitly states that commanders can authorize the coat to be tucked in for duty if necessary.
If necessary, that's a huge loophole.
It specifically notes security forces personnel as an example. And this is where a technical sergeant's level B comprehension is activated. They have to interpret why a deviation from the standard is necessary.
Because they need to understand the function.
Right. They have to understand that for a security forces member wearing a heavy duty belt with weapons and gear, an untucked coat is a severe snag hazard. It is a fundamental safety issue.
Now, before we go further into the uniform rules, we should be totally clear with you, the listener. Our goal right now is simply to impartially report what is in this source material.
Yes, strictly the source material.
We aren't taking any sides or endorsing any specific cultural or political viewpoints regarding religious wear or accommodations. We are just looking at how the Air Force systematically regulates these elements. Because the text does detail how the uniform adapts to diversity, specifically outlining religious accommodations like turbans, under-turbans, and beards.
And the regulation handles these accommodations with the exact same systemic logic. It states the material for these items must be subdued or match the OCP camouflage, presenting a professional military image.
So a TSUT has to evaluate the execution of that accommodation against the baseline professional standard. We even see this micromanagement in the physical training gear. The text says commanders have the authority to standardize whether PT shirts are worn tucked or untucked during formations.
True.
And if you are wearing a long-sleeve PT shirt untucked, it has to extend to the bottom of the side pocket on the shorts, but it absolutely cannot cover the reflective material. It requires this constant, hyper-vigilant enforcement of visual standards.
Yeah, it really does.
Which brings me to the obvious question. Is this intense micromanagement over a 1-inch sleeve measurement or a Velcro patch simply about psychological control? Or is there a functional consequence to having a patch sewn half an inch off-center?
There is a severe functional consequence. Visual uniformity breeds absolute operational safety and esprit de corps. You have to think about the environments these individuals operate in.
Like combat zones.
Yes. In a high-stress contingency environment, say a chaotic flight line or a forward operating base personnel must instantly and flawlessly identify an individual's role, rank, and specific qualifications.
Because if a medic needs to identify the commander during a crisis, they literally cannot afford to be confused by non-standard uniform wear.
Exactly. Any visual deviation creates cognitive friction. It slows down processing time when milliseconds matter, but it actually goes much deeper than that.
How so?
If a technical sergeant permits deviations from the uniform standard, if they let the Velcro and sewn-on mix slide or ignore the 1-inch sleeve rule, they are systematically degrading the baseline discipline of their unit.
The broken windows theory, basically.
Precisely. When baseline discipline erodes in a garrison environment, it invariably collapses in combat. A failure to maintain these supposedly minor visual standards is fundamentally a failure to prepare for life or death operations.
Okay, so if Chapter 23 is about controlling the physical uniform to prevent that cognitive friction, what happens when those sane airmen actually interact with each other? How do you standardize behavior and greetings between hundreds of thousands of people?
That brings us to Chapter 24.
Right. If Chapter 23 dictates the visual architecture, Chapter 24 dictates the behavioral choreography.
And this is exactly where we transition from Level B comprehension into Level C application for specific interpersonal sections. A technical sergeant must physically execute these traditions in real-world scenarios. We begin with the symbols that represent the organization, which are highly calculated.
Right, like the Department of the Air Force SEAL.
Hmm.
The text breaks down exactly what every element means. The circular background is ultramarine blue. The trim is Air Force yellow. It features 13 white stars representing the original colonies, and the numerals, 1947, which is the year the Department of the Air Force was actually established.
And the official Air Force symbol is just as deliberate. The upper half features stylized wings representing the enlisted men and women.
I saw that.
The lower half includes a sphere for global vigilance, a star representing space and the officer corps, and 3 diamonds. Those 3 diamonds specifically represent the Air Force core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do.
Again, just a quick note for you, the listener. As we move into the protocols surrounding national symbols like the flag and the anthem, we're simply conveying the regulations exactly as they are written in the handbook without endorsing any outside political narratives.
Right.
But the expectations laid out in the text for the national anthem are absolute. Indoors, in uniform, without headgear, military members must stand and remain at the position of attention without rendering a salute.
Outdoors in uniform, they must render the military salute at the first note of the anthem and retain that exact position until the very last note.
The protocol even extends to moving vehicles. When on a military installation, during the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner or to the colors, vehicles in motion must pull to the side of the road and stop. The individuals inside must sit quietly until the music ends.
But notice, here again, the text acknowledges vagueness.
Let me guess. It leaves room for the mission.
Correct. It explicitly states this must be done if consistent with safety and mission requirements.
So a TSGT driving a munitions truck on an active flight line has to apply Level C judgment. They have to know when stopping abruptly for the anthem is actually more dangerous than continuing the mission. They have to weigh the protocol against the immediate physical reality.
Precisely. And that physical control reaches its absolute peak in the execution of drill and formation. The manual provides exacting mathematical standards for how human bodies move together. When marching, it mandates a 24-inch step. It dictates a cadence of 100 to 120 steps per minute.
I was reading the section on the position of attention, and it is the ultimate expression of subjugating individual physical quirks to a collective standard.
It leaves no room for individuality.
None. When the command for attention is given, members have to bring their heels together smartly. Feet are turned out equally to form a 45-degree angle. Legs straight, knees unlocked.
Even the hands are regulated.
Yeah, arms hang straight down alongside the body, wrists straight, hands cupped with thumbs resting exactly along the first joint of the forefinger. Silence and immobility are entirely mandatory.
It is about creating a single, unified entity out of 50 different individuals. But in the midst of all this strict regulation, there is a fascinating paradox regarding the United States flag.
Yes, this blew my mind. We've just detailed how this organization regulates the exact 45-degree angle of your feet and the exact spice brown thread on your chest.
Right.
Yet the text explicitly states that despite popular belief, there is no official meaning to the folds of the United States flag. Furthermore, there is no official flag folding script.
That is correct. The text notes that various national interest groups hold flag folding ceremonies, and a narrative is widely used to express gratitude to veterans. But the handbook explicitly states that this narrative is not for official ceremonial use.
Just like corporate lore, the official handbook says one thing, that there is no official meaning to the folds. But the culture fundamentally believes and practices a mythos around the folding of the flag anyway.
It serves a distinct purpose.
Right, the institution allows it because the emotional weight of that tradition is so necessary for the people serving. You can't just regulate people into sacrificing their lives. I mean, they need that emotional resonance.
And this is exactly where we must connect the protocol to the bigger picture. Protocol is not merely about rigid obedience to a 24-inch step or an untucked PT shirt. It is an internationally recognized system of respect.
So it's a language.
Yes, physical language. For a technical sergeant operating at level C, applying, they must execute these traditions to physically demonstrate the fraternity of the profession of arms. For example, the text dictates that when at a military funeral in uniform, members must salute the caisson or hearse as it passes.
They are turning the written policy into a physical reality. The junior airmen are watching them to see if the rules actually matter.
Exactly. And the consequence of failing to apply these customs is the rapid degradation of the unit's identity. If a leader fails to enforce or model these traditions, if they do not stand at attention correctly, if they do not salute the hearse, they are signaling to their subordinates that the core values represented by those three diamonds are entirely optional.
And what happens then?
The fallout of that failure is a fractured culture. It creates an environment lacking the mutual respect required to function under extreme pressure. The system breaks down.
So let's bring this all together for you. What initially looks like an overwhelming, maybe even pedantic list of rules, from the exact placement of a chaplain badge, to the 1-inch cuff rule on an OCP coat, to the protocol of pulling a vehicle over during the national anthem, is actually a masterclass in scaling organizational culture.
The Air Force does not simply hand its personnel a rule book and hope for compliance. Through the Airman Development and Testing Chart, it provides a rigorous, systemic cognitive framework.
It explicitly defines how deeply its leaders must master the material.
Yes, ensuring the cultural and operational systems sustain themselves from the ground up and entirely eliminating passive hope.
It makes you look at your own workplace a little differently, doesn't it? If your industry had an ADTC, what level of comprehension are you currently operating at regarding your organization's core values? Are you just remembering them, or are you actually applying them? But I want to leave you with a completely different question to ponder today.
What's that?
We've talked a lot about the human element, how a technical sergeant needs level B understanding and level C application to navigate the gray areas. Like knowing what a tucked-in shirt is a safe. Can a machine enforce a strict standard while simultaneously understanding the human nuance of, if necessary for the mission? It's something to think about the next time you get an automated email from corporate telling you your email signature is out of compliance.
A system is only as strong as its comprehension of the mechanisms that hold it together, whether that system is human or artificial.
Exactly. Because without that deep comprehension, you're just hoping the rules work. And as we established at the start, passive hope is always a liability.